If you're asking yourself, why can't I be a more patient father? Well, guess what? Your brain is like Google. Whatever you put in that search bar, your brain will go find you the answer. So if you're asking yourself, why can't I be a more patient father? It's going to be like, well, it's because you don't take care of yourself. You don't make enough money. You're stressed out at home. You're not having sex with your wife. So obviously you're not getting it done at home. There's a laundry list of things that will come your way when you ask yourself really poor questions.
Let's talk about change. The truth is, nothing changes unless you change. And if you want to step into your full potential, you need to surround yourself with the right people. That is exactly why I have created the InPowered Life community. Within this community, I'm going to be teaching you the exact same mindset and energy practices that I have taught my clients that are paying me well over six figures, including CEO owners of billion-dollar organizations and professionals at the very top of their fields. You're going to get access to 2 live virtual calls every single month with me, where we're going to dive into mindset, energy practices, spiritual principles that are going to help you thrive in every area of your life. Can't make a call? No worries. We're going to provide you with a recording so that you can catch up anytime. Plus, you're going to have the opportunity for direct coaching from me and to learn from incredible guest speakers who are going to share their best practices and growth. Remember, you become the people that you spend the most time with. So why not spend time within a community that is going to elevate you and your life? For an introductory $499, you're going to get a full year of support and coaching alongside high performers who are committed to expanding their careers, their growth, their finances, and to elevate their overall quality of life. Just click the link in the show notes or log into rudyricksteins.com to lock in your spot and start your transformation today. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast, a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, then hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudy and Aniston Ricksteins, and this is the Empowered Life. Welcome to the InPowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudy Ricksteins. I'm your host, and we are bringing back an incredible human being, somebody very, very special to me. He came onto the show as an introduction, and I will tell you, meeting Larry Hagner was amazing. Having a beautiful, deep, profound conversation was very, very, very rich in knowledge and in shifting how I think and feel and making me challenge how I am as a father. And I like to think that I'm really good at showing up and being intentional about how I am as a husband, as a father, as a leader out in the world. And yet he challenged me and pushed me even further. But the real impact came at the end of that episode, once it had aired. And it had actually gone out to the community, and people started messaging and saying, oh my gosh, this guy Larry's really changing how I think, changed how I feel. Oh, I'm starting to follow Larry now. And so I noticed there was a lot of back and forth dialogue just between myself and our listeners, you. And then I went on to Larry's show, and oh my gosh, man, was it fire. Just an incredible conversation with an incredible human being that again challenged how I show up and who I am and how I think and how I feel. And then the magic came once again after that. I have never in my life received so many messages from people who are within his community because of who he is and how he shows up. This is Larry Hagner from the Dad Edge podcast. Again, second time we're having him on the show. He has over 40 million downloads of his podcast. He is a 2-time best-selling author of The Dad Edge, the book, and The Spirit of Fatherhood. He has 3 other books, one which he co-wrote with his son and 2 children's books. But the book I want to talk about today is The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood, which is coming out September 16th. I love to talk about the qualifications of people and who they are and how they show up and why are they qualified to be who they are. Larry has been married for 21 years. He has 4 rambunctious boys that are leaders out and in the world today. He has over 1,000 podcast interviews, interviewing some of the biggest names that literally we could recant on his show. But the thing that impresses me most about him is that when he speaks, his audience listens. They don't just listen, they take action, they follow, and they follow through. And that is very, very rare in this space. I just want you to know right up front, you are going to have your minds blown today, regardless of where this conversation goes. He is going to touch you. He's going to impact you. But more than anything, he's going to encourage you to be a better version of you today. Larry, brother, thank you so much for joining us in the Empowered Life Podcast. I'm excited to have you back again.
Well, man, oh man, I really hope I can live up to all that, because that was a lot. But I mean, I'll do my best.
I think you're going to be just fine. You know, I was sharing with you before we hit record. I went back and re-listened to our episode on the Empowered Life podcast, and I just walked away with that feeling again this morning of like, man, it was just so rich. There was so many nuggets, and I rarely go back and re-listen again and again to past episodes. And I really think that that's something I'm going to need to start doing because there was just so much value in what we spoke about. I do want to touch on one thing, and you mentioned it in our previous episode, so I'm going to link it in so people can go back and re-listen to it. You are writing a book right now, which is very, very aptly titled The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood. And you mentioned in the previous episode that you, in having had your life, and I'm going to paraphrase so we can get into some of the teachings, is that you grew up without a father. He wasn't around when you were born. And then around 4 years old, a man comes into your life and he's becomes your stepfather. And eventually the relationship turns toxic between him and your mom. And he's very abusive. And you graphically describe, you know, him pulling you off the floor, dragging you back into your room, and just the vision of what kind of life that must be from 4 until 10 years old until eventually he divorces your mom and they separate. And then later coming in and meeting your real father. And then within a few short months, he leaves. And then you meeting him again in a Starbucks so many years later, and the tumultuous emotion that came through that. But here's what you said that really hit me. You said, I learned all of the ways of not being a good father, like all the ways to not do it. And that's not enough. And we never unpack that. And so I'm going to ask you to start right here, right now. You've just written a book on supporting people of how to be a legendary father. You've had an entire life experience of what not to do, but you said that's not what qualifies you to be a good father. What did you mean?
It's such a good question. I think such a great way to start because I think we, there's a lot of guys out there, that grew up with a challenging childhood, And by the way, like when I share my story of growing up, a lot of people are like, "Man, that really sucks." Like I'm like, no pity, don't feel sorry, like at all, because to be honest, like it took me a while to say what I'm about to say, but I'm very thankful for the way that I was brought up. Like, I mean, there was a lot of things that I learned, a lot of grit that I had to learn, or I had to grow up really, really fast. And I don't regret a bit of it at all. And, but going back to what you were saying, when I first became a father 20 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a good dad. And it's because I know everything of what not to do. Like that's what's going to make me a good dad. So I know I honestly felt I know more than the average bear because of how I was raised, and I know what not to do. And I'll tell you, having a list of what not to do is about as effective as you going to Home Depot, buying that brand new Pit Boss or Traeger smoker that you're so excited. You open it up in the box and the manual doesn't say, here's 100 ways not to put this thing together. Best of luck. Figure it out. Like that would be, we wouldn't expect that when we go to buy something or when we're reading directions or how to figure something out. Like here's every which way not to do this. It actually gives you the step-by-step instructions on what to do, how to do it, the whole 9 yards, right? So what I thought early on being a father, and I could not figure out for the life of me, I was like, why am I not a very patient father? Why is it that I have a hard time playing with my kids? Why is it I have a hard time connecting with my kids? Why am I having a hard time connecting with my wife and my marriage? Like I'm really trying to pursue what I didn't have growing up. And like, why is it just not working out that way? And I really realized early on that what we focus on grows and what we focus on expands. So if we're focusing on all the things of what not to do, unfortunately, we're probably going to live pretty far into that life, whether we want to or not. So it's no different than like, don't think of a pink elephant wearing a blue hat in your front yard. No matter what you do right now, don't think of a pink elephant wearing a blue hat in your front yard right now. Like you can't help but think of the thing, even though you're telling yourself not to do it. So for me, my thought process was, I know all these things about what not to do. Like even like the simple fact of, I don't want to hit my kids. Like I don't want to hit my kids. Like I'm not going to hit my kids out of anger. And what did I do? I hit my kid. Like I spanked my son who was 4 at the time. And that was actually the catalyst for me to start Dad Edge, because I was like, there's got to be a better way. So the past 13 years has been literally exactly what I've titled the book, which is The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood, which is the pursuit, the growth, the knowledge, the know-how, the what to do, what not, and staying away from the what not to do. And I'm sure there's a little bit of that to some degree, but just kind of a funny story also about the title. My publisher, who is originally going to be publishing this book, he unfortunately, his publishing company went under right before this book was supposed to be released. So I'm now self-publishing, which I quite frankly prefer. But the CEO and the founder of the publishing agency is not a dad, and he wasn't married at the time. And he's like, "What's the title of the book going to be?" I said, "Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood." And he's like, he looked really confused. He's like, "Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood." He goes, "That seems like a bit long for a title. Why not just call it Legendary Fatherhood?" And I just smiled at him and I said, "You're not a dad." Like, and what you just said, if I asked a dad, what his thoughts on what you just said, he'd probably smile and chuckle too, because quite frankly, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as like, "Look, I did it. I'm a legendary dad. I'm amazing." Like, no guy ever gets to the top of that mountain and says, "Look how awesome I am." However, there are the uncommon. There are the few. They're not the many and they're not the common. They are the uncommon. They are the few that states, "I am going to pursue this like my life depends on it." The growth, the skills, the know-how, the things that I need to be prepared for, I'm going to pursue that like nobody's business. And that actually becomes it's the beautiful journey of fatherhood. It's not the destination, if that helps.
We, as parents in our home, my wife Aniston and I, we are very intentional about how we show up. And listen, I'm going to be honest. I'm not always the great parent. Sometimes I'm moody. Sometimes I'm grumpy. Sometimes I need the house quiet. But I will always ask my kids, "How am I doing as a father? Like, how am I doing? 1 through 10." And then they'll be like, "10, Dad, you're a 10." And I'm like, "No, no, I really want to know." And then, I'll have that conversation where my son actually had the courage to say to me, "Sometimes you yell a lot." And I was like, "Oh," like, as much as that hurts, because you wanna say, "No, I don't," and make yourself feel better, I said to him, "When do I do it? Like, give me an example. What did I do? How did it make you feel? What do you think that means?" And getting him to articulate and then explaining from my vantage point, "Here's what I was going through, and I'm gonna be better not to do that." And then I actually instituted another thing where I said, "The next time I make you feel that way, in the moment, even if I'm mad, in the moment, like, veins popping, I want you to raise your hand and say, 'Hey, Dad, you're making me feel this way.'" So I get to stop in that moment. The thing is, I've never ever had to do that, but I gave him the space to be able to say, "Hey, you know what? You're a little grumpy right now. I totally appreciate that you're grumpy, but like, I don't deserve that tone or whatever that would be in that moment." And I just think, what would that look like if so many more people had spaces like that to be able to articulate, even if you're 5, 6, my son's 11 now, but being able to articulate, like, "Oh, what you just said hurt my feelings," or, "You're in a bad mood. Is that about me?" I want to use that as the segue to go back again, but a little further into what you had just said a moment ago, because you had the rule book of what not to do. You essentially got the Home Depot 100 things not to do father checklist, but you've successfully, beautifully, over the last 13 years, been able to not only transform the relationship you have with your wife, with your children, which I'm going to encourage everyone who is not following you to jump onto your Instagram, because there's so much value there. There's so much just openness and honesty and vulnerability. And there's so much learning in that, but that there was a shift that created that. So if you didn't get the rule book, that was setting you up to focus and expand on what is working. How did you intentionally create the shift in you to be able to create the shift in people around you?
Thank you so much for the question. Now, I'll tell you, just for context and just being totally real, yes, I've got a great relationship with my wife. Like, it's really fantastic. The connection I have with my kids, I never thought would be possible. It's really strong. But I will tell you that the journey to get here was like an EKG. It was not linear. It didn't just skyrocket like you would think, like maybe the stock market would do on its very best day. It was a blip of like the 2008 recession, and then it was like then we got like really really good. We went hog wild for a few years, and then COVID hits, and boom, the stock market gets hit again. It's like it's been like that for the past 13 years, up down up down up down. But one thing I can tell you that has been consistent, and I think that's probably why I'm at the place I am today, is because it was consistent. Consistency meaning like there were blips and there were seasons of setbacks, but there was always awareness and the know-how to get back, and actually not even just get back, but get better, right? My wife and I she actually decided after 10 years to come on the podcast this past month in August, because it's our 22nd wedding anniversary. And she'll even tell you that the one thing that's been constant in our relationship is the consistency to always work on it, no matter what. Right. And the awareness to be like, we always know that our valleys are going to be short lived, because we're going to attack them. Right. We're not going to sit back and get resentful or get complacent. We are going to constantly, like, we see these things from like a mile away and we attack them together. Right. In a good way. But going back to how did I start this and what did I do? So I'll go back to that dark place in 2012 after I spanked my 4-year-old son, who is now the starting center on our high school football team. And he is an absolute beast. I would not even dare to put my hands on him now, because he reminds me all the time how much stronger he is than me. He would kill me. And so I joke about that, but like I go back to that time in 2012 and I just spanked him. And that time was a super dark time for me. I was actually on another podcast not too long ago, and the guy looked dead at me. He goes, "You haven't forgiven yourself for this yet." And that's the first time a podcast guest or a host had ever called me out on that. And there was nowhere to hide. And I never thought of it that way. And I was like, he's right. Like I haven't. So like that night where I spanked him, I didn't just spank him, but he fell at my hands. Like I had to, like, immediately after I spanked him, he lost his balance and he fell. And then when I went to go pick him up, I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? He saw me coming at him with my hands to help him, and he thought I was going to hurt him again. He literally just closed his eyes and shivered like this and was like, don't hurt me. And that was a mirror that I never want to be in front of again. Like that was one of the most humbling experiences ever in my life, one of the darkest experiences of my life. And it was in that moment, to answer your question, of like, I'm focusing on all the things of what I don't want to be. Like, there's got to be a better way to this. And I started really analyzing my life and the things that over time, either I was pretty good at or people just in general were good at. So like, for instance, I'm like, I'm in pretty decent shape, for a dude. Like, why is that? Well, I also have a 4-year degree in exercise science with a minor in nutrition. So I have a 4-year know-how of exactly how the body works and what to do. Like, so I know how to stay in shape and get lean. All I have to go do the right things. At the time, I was doing martial arts for about 10 years and I was pretty decent at that. And I was like, well, why am I decent at that? And well, I go to class 2 or 3 times a week. I have an instructor. I have an entire community that I do this with, and I practice all the time. So there's some know-how there. And then I really started thinking about everybody else in the world, that just, why are they good at what they do? Well, it's because they've either have had training or they allow themselves to learn. So the key message here was, why not go learn it? Is there a way to go learn this? Like, just like anything else, can you go learn fatherhood? Even though the perception, I think that's one of the other side notes I just want to talk about really quick, is I want to challenge men out there to perceive fatherhood differently. And what I mean by that is, a lot of us think, well, I'm a man, I'm a dad, this should come naturally to me and I should automatically be good at it. And that's about as effective as, like, you've never done jujitsu and you're going to go do a jujitsu tournament and you think you're going to go kick ass and take names. You're going to get your rear end handed to you. Fatherhood and marriage, quite frankly, in my opinion, now that I've learned, is no different. It's a lot like going to that jujitsu tournament with no training and you think you're going to clean house and you end up getting your house cleaned and you're like, oh my gosh, like what just happened to me? So I decided on that night, I was like, I'm just going to try to learn this. And that journey started with a Facebook page, which I never did for a following. I just went out and I started learning. I started researching things like, how do I be a more patient dad? Like, literally, I just started researching that. Turns out being a more patient dad has a lot to do with learning resiliency and emotional regulation. If you can learn emotional IQ, how to be more resilient, and emotional regulation, you can actually be a more patient dad. And I'm like, holy crap. So this no longer is like a theory, I need to be patient. There's actually skills that go along with this. Like, look at that. So like, and the other thing with marriage, right? Well, I'm a man, I'm married. So technically being a good husband should come naturally to me. But what we don't understand is women have very different needs in a marriage than a man does. So a woman's basic needs in a relationship is to feel seen, heard, and safe. A lot of times, believe it or not, like us guys, we're not so great at fulfilling those needs. Like, we're really not great at listening. We're really not great at seeing what she does. And some of the things we do don't make her feel so safe. And I'm not talking about physical safety. The safety has the tree of safety has many branches, right? So there's emotional safety, there's physical safety, there's financial safety, there's, can I tell you hard things and you're going to be calm and you're going to be able to take it okay, right? That there's safety in that. Are you going to be patient with our kids? There's safety with that. Are you going to be playful with our kids? There's safety in that. There's all kinds of different things. But once you even understand that concept of like, my wife needs to feel seen, heard, and safe, and my needs are to feel respected, appreciated, and I need physical affection. Well, at least now I know what the other person needs, right? And I also know as a man how to clearly articulate and communicate to my wife how she can fulfill my needs. So it's literally like a scientific recipe. I know a lot of us think, well, no, it's more romantic, it's more feelings, it's all that. It's actually, believe it or not, it's a choice. And it's a lot of things that we do are very, very tactical, and they're very, very selfless at the same time. What we think might work probably won't work. Right. But when we understand what works and why it works, well, then we can go do that thing and now it works again. So, the past 13 years has been this pursuit of what are the right things to do. And that's when I started the podcast 10 years ago, and 1,400 episodes since of interviewing these experts of like, what are these right things, and extracting those. And then the cool thing is that, a lot of people think, like, since I've been podcasting or I coach men, they're like, oh, you're a guru, you're an expert. And I always challenge people. Like it's hard for me to take compliments, number one, but number two, I'm like, no. I'm just a student, and I'm still a student. The only difference between me and you is I'm just a bit ahead of you in class, and I can give you the cheat codes now. I can give you the study guides that I've learned, right? Because I've kind of done a lot of the dirty work. But I'll finish with this. The past 13 years have been that pursuit and that education, but it's never done. That's why that's why my book is The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood. A really good example to hit this home is I have 4 kids, and I now have an adult child. This is my first time in my entire life that I'm parenting an adult child. And that looks very different than his 9-year-old brother does. And so now I'm in this season, to be really honest with you, Rudy. I'm like, what does this look like now? Right? I got to go learn this one, because this is different than parenting when he was 14. He's now 19. He's a man, legally a total adult. I have very little control over anything. Right. But now I need to go about this a bit differently. So hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely beautifully. And I'm going to encourage our audience to go back and re-listen to something you said in the previous episode, because you spoke about we don't really have control over our kids unless we have connection. And I don't want to dive into that now because you answered it beautifully in that episode. But while you were speaking now, it just made me think about it, because as our kids grow, even with our partners, even in business, these relationships evolve, but they're never going to evolve. Or let's say this, they will only ever evolve to the degree of the connection we have with the individual. I want to talk about your book, because that's the whole reason I invited you back onto the show. I think you're incredible. I love how you communicate. I love how you teach, and I love how vulnerable you are, which I think really is a sign of somebody who is confident in their ability to be who they are, not be who somebody else wants them to be. And I think that's why you have so many people that so religiously follow what you do and how you show up. And I haven't had a chance to grab a copy of your book yet. It comes out September 16th. And I know that, as we discussed, your book is really broken out into 4 parts. I would love for you to dive into a little bit about each of the 4 sections. You said the first section is drift, second is marriage, fatherhood, and then leader, how to be a leader, leadership portion. And I would love for you to explain a little bit about each section. Why were they included? Why were they included in that order? And what will we really gain by grabbing a copy of this book? And I'm multi-layering questions here, but I'm going to allow you just to riff on all of it in any order you like. But is this book specifically only for men? Is this book specifically for men in certain places in their life? Or is this just a book that we could pick up and we would gain a tremendous amount of advantage from, regardless of where we are?
Well, thank you for the question. So yeah, you can actually pre-order a copy of the book, which is Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood. If you go to thedadedge.com/legendary book, all one word again, thedadedge.com/legendary book. There's a couple things that, I can't send out the book until September. So it'll be a signed copy. It's $28 for the pre-order. But what I'm doing is I'm giving people who pre-order the book access to my two most popular courses, which number one is creating more patience. So exactly what we're talking about. I actually had to go, and it took me years, but I researched the skills on like, how do I help a guy, including myself, right? Because I actually kind of wrote the course for myself, like, because we all kind of battle the same things. How do I teach a guy in under 45 minutes how he can be more patient with his kids? And it really boils down to 6 skills. And I teach that in that course. And it's been a wildly successful course because that's one of the things that we struggle with as guys is patience. So you'll have access to that right away. And then the other course that you'll have, and I'll get to it in the book as well, which is creating an extraordinary marriage through elevated communication, connection, and intimacy. I teach you 11 skills on how to communicate better with your wife to improve your friendship, your partnership, your intimacy, the whole 9 yards to fulfill those needs that we were talking about. So I figure if you're going to pre-order the book, each one of those courses are $500 each. If you're going to pre-order the book, I'm going to give those away for free because that tells me, hey, you want this information now. So there's that. But going back to your question, the first part in this book is called The Drift, which in this thing I call Let's Set the Stage. So the drift this is what it's like. And by the way, just because I do this work, that doesn't mean I'm immune to the drift or what I'm about ready to talk about. I'm just maybe more aware of it and can get in front of it a little faster. And it's really sneaky. It's really, really sneaky. And the drift really feels like this. So when I first started doing this work, I worked with a mentor and he's like, you need to think of like an avatar. And I'm like, an avatar? Like, what do you mean? He's like a person that you talk to. Like, you imagine a person that you're speaking to when you're podcasting or coaching. So I came up with this guy by the name of Lance. And Lance is 38 years old. He's got 2 kids. One is 7 and one is 5. He's been married for about 10 years. And he goes to a job that it's sort of mediocre. It pays the bills. He feels a little trapped. His relationship with his wife is not exactly what he thought it would be. It's okay. It's not terrible. They're not getting divorced, but he's not getting the intimacy he wants. He's not having the conversations that he wants. The majority of his conversations with his wife is kind of like that high level managerial, like, what are the kids doing, the activities, the dinners, but very little dates and deep conversations. But it's okay. He's not going to necessarily, pull the fire alarm or anything yet. The connection with his kids, he wishes was better. He wants to be able to have more patience and he wants to have better conversations with his kids, but he's not exactly sure what it looks like. And every day he's kind of guessing a little bit. His physical health is not what he wants it to be, but it's okay for now. He figures it's just a part of being a dad, which kind of impacts his mental health a little bit, which he's just like, I just don't feel great about the world around me. Nothing is on fire, but man, I feel like I'm leaving a lot on the table. And everything in life just sort of feels a bit mediocre, like it's drifting, right? It's that wash, rinse, repeat. And here's what I'll tell you. That's one of the sneakiest things. And I'm going to say this with all passion. That's one of the sneakiest things in a man's life to steal his life away from him without him even knowing it, in my opinion. I get the chills saying that because I'm so passionate about it, because I think it's such a slow burn that nobody notices it, not even the guy it's happening to, until it's too late. And the way we find out it's too late is a couple of things. He's in a job that he hates, or he's in a job that he dislikes, and then he leaves it or he gets let go, and that company has found somebody else, and this guy is a disaster, like emotionally, like, oh my God, like I lost my job. It was everything to me, right? What he didn't realize is there's more to that man than what he does for a living, right? Or the other red flag that happens is his wife rolls over one morning, and after so much time of them not being connected, she's like, Lance, I don't know if I really want to be married anymore. Like, I just don't know if I love you anymore. I just don't feel the love for you anymore. And he's like, holy crap, like what just happened? Or he sees that by the teenage years, his son or his daughter or both are just like, they're out with friends. They really don't want much to do with them. And he's like, what the hell happened? And everybody around him is telling him, well, hey, dude, that's fatherhood. That's what happens. They're teenagers. They're going to do that. And then, the physical thing, like, I'm overweight. I have a dad bod. And we joke about it, but down deep, we're like, damn, like, how do I look better and feel better and be more confident? Well, this is just a part of being a dad. With every freaking bone in my body, Rudy, I'm screaming for every guy out there, no, that is not your life. Those are actually warning signs that is not your life. When you think that you have to settle for all of these things that I just talked about because it's just a part of being a dad and it's just a part of life, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you feel that you're leaving anything on the table as it relates to what you do for a living, your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, the connection with your kids, the connection with your wife, the intimacy, the communication, all of that, I'm telling you, there's more on the table that you're leaving. And don't wait until these alarm bells go off until it's too late. That's the drift. So if you're feeling those symptoms, here's the good news. Number one, you're really, really normal because the majority of men feel this way. But number two is, here's the really good news. You don't have to settle for it. You don't have to settle for it. You can actually go learn how to elevate every single one of these areas. And it's actually, quite frankly, not that hard. The hardest part is being like, I want help with this. I want to do this. I want to learn this. Once you've done that, once that desire is like, I want to do this, I want to get my hands dirty, that's when the true change happens. That's where you can interrupt the drift and be like, no more. No, not on my watch. This ain't happening. I'm going to go create the marriage of my dreams. I'm going to go create a connection with my kids. I'm going to go defy the odds and have an incredible relationship with my teenage kids that always want to be home, that tell me everything that's hard for them to say. And I'm going to go have an amazing body that I'm proud of. And I'm going to feel confident in my mental health and my emotional health. It's going to be on point. That's going to be my life. And the good news is you can go create that. So that's the drift.
Hey, it's Aniston Ricksteins here, and I want to ask you, have you ever wondered if there's more to your life and work than what you're doing right now? What if I told you that the universe is hiring and you were born to fill a role that will bring you true purpose and success? In my new #1 best-selling book, The Universe is Hiring, Discover the Role You Were Born to Fill, I'm going to show you exactly how to step into that role. This isn't just a book full of inspiration. It's a roadmap to help you start shifting into a more fulfilling life right now. You'll get clear on your unique purpose, learn how to align with your strengths, and take actionable steps towards the career and life that truly light you up. If you're ready to make a change and start living the life you were meant for, grab your copy today. Available anywhere you buy your books online or click the link in the show notes.
I asked the question really in the beginning, and I'm sure some people listening were like, it's clearly a book for men just by the title alone. But while you're speaking, I am going through a Rolodex in my mind of some of the clients that I support who are powerful women in business, multi seven figure income earners running really big businesses. And yet they come up against exactly the same things. When I meet them, so many of them are in the drift. And I would just challenge that if you're listening to this, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, if it is resonating with you, I would recommend you dive just a little bit deeper into this because I do think we can all benefit from it. Because how to have a better quality relationship is takes two parts. How to be a better parent takes two parts. How to learn, resilience and patience and to calm your emotions and to have emotional resiliency. All of that is applicable to anybody and everybody. And that's why I had asked that question right up front, because I do think that there's value in all this information for everybody. It's not necessarily just aimed at very specific men like Lance at this time in their life. You obviously have three more sections in the book that really move into how to be better in your marriage, how to be a better father, and how to be a better leader. I love to ask this question when people write a book and we talk about it on the show. If you were to tell the audience to read one chapter and one chapter only, if there was only going to be one chapter that would, somebody only has the time for one, right? What would that chapter be, and why would you pick that?
Oh boy. So are we talking anybody? Or are we talking about,
Yeah, just fathers.
okay. So, here it is, chapter 10 for husbands, because this will change your life. Chapter 10 is the quality of your relationships is determined by the quality of your questions. So the quality of your relationships are determined by the quality of your questions. So and here's what I'll tell you, that, like I said, the tree of safety for a woman has many branches. The quality of our questions and the quality of our lives has many, many branches. So let me break this down. If you're asking your kids, or let's just say you're anybody, How was your day? Like, what do you think answer is going to come back, Rudy?
It'll be really short, like fine, good.
Fine, good, right? So while that's a default question, and while the intention behind the question is beautiful, because what a lot of people, when dads ask that question of their kids, what a dad is actually saying inside is, please let me in on your day. Tell me all about it. Give me the details. I really want to know everything, right? But that's not a question that's going to extract the result that you want. It's just not going to happen. Your kids are, the way that's going to land is, it's a default question. There's not a whole lot of intention behind it, and they're going to give you a one-word answer. Fine, good, boring, right? Instead, if you ask a question that's more generative in nature, generative mean like it's going to generate a story, it's going to generate detail, it's going to generate connection. All three of those things: detail, story, connection. You want to ask a question like, hey man, like, and by the way, I have boys, obviously. So this way I talk to them like, hey man, like, dude, tell me about the best part of your day, dude. Like, what was the highest point moment today? What happened? And you'll see them. They'll start to like wander, and they'll be like, Dad, like, I scored a goal in soccer at recess. And then you're like, no way. Are you serious? Like, what happened? Tell me about it. And suddenly they're like, oh, this happened and this happened and this happened. And then they're like so excited to tell you, and you're getting this story. And what you're actually getting is connection. You're getting the quality of that relationship resides in that quality of that question of being interested, right? An interested dad is interesting. You literally become the most interesting dad, the most fascinating dad, the best dad on the block when you're interested in your kid's world. So that quality of that question really elevates everything in the relationship, because you're interested, and you're asking a question that they can't give a yes or no, yes or no, or a fine or good or crazy or whatever, right? It's going to create connection. The same is true in your marriage, right? So like, I love asking my wife, what is something I currently do that makes you feel most loved? What are some things that I do that make you feel most seen, right? Tell me about a time in our relationship where you felt like we were ultimately connected. What were we doing, and why did you pick that time, right? Why was it so meaningful to you? When I get to the heart of story, and I get to like a lot of meat on the bone with a question like that, I'm going to get a connection. I'm going to actually get an emotional response from the other person, which is going to make them feel more connected to me, right? And so there's that. Here's the other thing too. The quality of our lives reside in the questions that we ask ourselves. So like, for instance, I learned this from one of the Navy SEALs that I had on the podcast, Mark Devine, he's the one who really hit this one home. And this was in the early days. This was like episode 28. We're on episode like 1400 and something. And I'll never forget, he's like, whenever you ask yourself quietly questions that are default questions, I challenge you to challenge the questions you're asking yourself. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, let's just say you have a bad moment with your kids, and let's just say you lose your patience. If you're asking yourself, why can't I be a more patient father? Well, guess what? Your brain is like Google. Whatever you put in that search bar, your brain will go find you the answer. So if you're asking yourself, why can't I be a more patient father? It's going to be like, well, it's because you don't take care of yourself. You don't make enough money. You're stressed out at home. You're not having sex with your wife. So obviously you're not getting it done at home. Like there's a laundry list of things that will come your way when you ask yourself really poor questions. So I'm a big fan of high quality questions, even internally. So like, let's just say I lose my patience with my kids. Instead of being like, why can't I be a more patient father? I'm like, no, nope. Why can't is a terrible question. I'm putting a really bad question in the Google search bar of my brain that's going to get me a really shitty answer. And it's probably going to make me do what we focus on grows, what we focus on expands. So I'm just going to keep focusing on all the reasons why I'm not patient, versus here's the question. Okay, I just lost my patience with my kids. How might I go reconcile this? And how might I be a more patient father in the future? Automatically, I'm thinking, okay, how can I go reconcile? Okay, I'm going to go to that kid. I'm going to go have a conversation with them. I'm going to use the right tone. I'm going to use the right words. I'm going to humbly, go to them and say, hey man, dad really messed up. Like the way I spoke to you, that wasn't right. What you did wasn't right either. However, how I responded was completely inappropriate. And I'm really sorry about that. Like, I am really sorry about that. I did not mean to yell at you like that. And that, quite frankly, I'm thinking of ways to prevent that in the future. So that's how you go reconcile. And then when you start thinking about like, how might I be a more patient father? Then all of a sudden answers come back of like, well, the next time this happens, create some space, right? Don't react right away, right? Take a breath, walk away if you need to. Here's a great example. My kids long ago, over a decade ago, used to be kind of scared to tell me bad news because of the way I reacted. So like I started asking myself questions like, how do I make my kids feel more safer when they need to tell me something big or really bad? And I need to create space. So here's what I did. I asked myself that question. I'm like, how do I do this? And like, how do I maybe even bring them into this? Right? How do I respond better? So here's what I came up with. And here's what I asked my kids. I'm like, hey, obviously dad is not great at knee jerk reactions when you land bad news on me. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I don't understand. I don't know when bad news is coming. And when it just lands on my lap, I'm like, well, right. I was like, so, hey, can you help dad out? And they're like, yeah, what do you need? And I was like, the next time or from here on out, whenever you want to land some really gnarly news on me and you're really nervous about it and you feel that feeling of like, oh my God, a dad's going to freak out. Here's what I need you to do. Dad, I need you to tell me something. I need to tell you something and I need you not to be mad. And I'm like, that will cue me and it'll create pause in me knowing like, hey, you're about ready to drop something really big on me that quite frankly is going to take a lot of courage for you to tell me, a lot of bravery for you to tell me. And I don't want to mess this up because you telling me really bad news is really important in our relationship. You telling me things that happen that you're not proud of or dishonest or wrongdoing. It's really important that we keep that line of communication open. So help that out and let me know it's coming because that way I'll know. And I've been doing that now for about 10 years. My kids tell me things, dude. I'm sometimes I'll look at my kids, be like, I cannot believe they just told me that. Like they actually feel safe enough to tell me that. But we've also had so many reps of like, hey, I need to tell you something. I need you to not be mad. But like that's how we can really reprogram our world in our mind is those questions that we're asking ourselves quietly that nobody else can hear. It's the questions we ask our most important relationships in our life, whether it's your wife, your kids, your team, a client. You know this from being a coach. One of the most beautiful ways to help a client is to ask them a really good question that stops them in their tracks and gets them thinking differently.
For the benefit of the audience, when you ask a better question, I call them empowered questions, then you actually instruct the brain to look at more than 10 million bits of data and it shifts where the brain is actually finding the information. And if we have 10 million bits of data every single second and we are only ever aware of 50, the 50 bits is the Google search you were referencing earlier. So it just goes back to that and says, well, that was our past focus. Let's go back there. There's the information. And so you stay the same. But when you ask a broader question, a more inspired question, and you start asking, how can I be better? What can I do different? How could I fix this from where I'm at? Now you're accessing 10 million bits of data every single second. Your brain's looking for the answer to the new question. You find new evidence, new information. But here's the beautiful thing. The brain then goes and finds memories of when you've experienced something similar to that in the past to reaffirm and reinforce that. And so that's how you create systematic change, and change can happen in an instant. It's about changing the program. And all we have to do is change how we think or feel about something. But if we act a certain way and then we see our kids are disappointed in us, and then we're like, well, I'm not a good dad and it's because I'm stressed, and the brain stays in the same program, we stay the same. Ask the better question. And then we start saying, oh, actually, you know what? I am a better dad when I'm like this. So if I could be like that, then I could get more of that result. And then the brain dumps the memories of that with the emotion of that. And now we start to rearrange, I guess, the old belief and redefine a new one. I want to touch on a few things. You went way back and you were talking about how you had an entire list of how not to be a good father. And I asked the intentional question of how did you create the shift? And for the benefit of the audience, you essentially said you had awareness to who you were so that you could have the awareness moving forward of who you want to be. You have the awareness of what was your upbringing, and you had the awareness of how could you be different. And that was all grounded in exactly the same thing, which was essentially asking better questions. I want to give the audience something as we bring this episode nearing a close, tangible tactical tools. I know there are going to be people listening to this. I know Lance is out there and he's listening to this episode and he's thinking, I have never asked my wife a question like that. Like if I came up with that question right now, she's going to look at me like I've lost my mind. Or if I sit my kids down and I ask them that question, or I try to have a more meaningful dialogue out of nowhere, they're going to look at me like they won't connect. And it's the fear of the rejection might prevent someone from starting it. So what would be your advice in how do you introduce this new way of communicating so that you're not going to be fearful of rejection, of how they're going to react or respond?
I love this question because this is real world. And this is where, when guys aren't in like, a coaching community where they have this on the weekly, right? The reminders of these things. Like whenever I coach a one-on-one client or group, and we start doing things differently in relationships, I give these guys a warning. I'm like, this comes with a warning. And they're like, what is it? I was like, when you start operating different, your wife is going to look at you like you have two heads, and so are your kids. And they're like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, think about it. There are six basic human needs. There's certainty, there's uncertainty, community, love, growth, and contribution. When you start operating differently, you trigger that certainty button, and people are like, what are you doing? This is weird. Why are you asking this? Is something wrong? Like, have you been kidnapped by aliens and then come back here a different person? Like, when you ask your wife for years, how was your day? What's for dinner? And you come home and say, sweetheart, what is something I do that makes you feel most loved? She's going to do a double take. She's going to stop doing whatever she's doing and be like, who are you? And what have you done with my husband? And you need to expect that. And you are dead right, man. The fear is that if I go do this, she's going to think I'm full of it. Right. But here's the thing. I always like to compare this to the show, The Office. Do you watch The Office?
A few episodes. I'm not a big TV person. Yeah.
I'm not either, but Michael Scott,
Yeah.
right? Obviously. Okay. Steve Carell plays that part unbelievably, but like, think about it. The reason that his staff like cannot stand him is because of one reason. The guy has no self-awareness whatsoever. He thinks he's the best boss in the world. He thinks he's the funniest dude on the planet. And people think he is absolutely full of crap because of one reason. They're like, this guy has no clue. He's not funny. He's not a good leader, but he thinks he is. So people don't give people who don't have self-awareness a whole lot of street cred. So here's what you do. I interviewed Chris Voss a couple times on the podcast. He was the chief hostage negotiator for the FBI, wrote Never Split the Difference. And what he talks about is, if you're ever going to do something different in a relationship, give the person a heads up. In other words, what he says is, you call out the elephant in the room before they do. So here's what I instruct guys to do. If you're going to ask your wife a very different question, like, what is something I do that makes you feel most loved? Or like the question that you ask your kids, like, how am I doing as a dad? Like, if they're not used to that, they're going to be like, who are you? So here's what you do. You say, I'm going to ask you a question, and you're probably going to look at me like I have two heads, because quite frankly, I haven't asked you a question like this in probably 5+ years, and that's on me. But at the same time, I'm realizing that I need to start asking better questions like this. So I want to ask you something. You cool with that? And of course, when you do that, when you set the stage like that, now your wife is like, she's either going to be like, okay. She'll be pretty curious and pretty intrigued, but she'll probably won't be distracted with like, what the hell are you doing? Because she already knows something's coming, and he's aware that this is different. And that makes them feel safe. Because when you're aware that something's different and you call it out first, that's leadership. And now suddenly she feels a little bit more safer and a little bit more certain that something different is coming. And now she's intrigued of what it is. So say it before they do, with full ownership, and do it even with maybe some self-deprecating humor if you want to. That always like lightens the mood too.
I love the way that you explained that, and I'm a huge fan of Chris and his work. I actually was going to quote him in response to something you said earlier, and then I decided after seeing the time I would move forward, but I'm glad you brought his name up. I'm going to take what you shared and add one caveat in there. Understanding human behavior, people only ever do something openly, wholeheartedly, when they understand what's in it for them. And if you sit down and you say to somebody, hey, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to preface right up front, like, I haven't asked you a question like this in 5 years. And you're probably going to look at me like I have two heads, but I really want to know this. I would almost add to that saying, like, and I'm asking this selfishly for this reason, so that they aren't asking the question of like, why is he doing that? Like, why would he change now in 5 years? And so if you name the pink elephant, and then you explain what's in it for you and what's the potential of what's in it for them. So for the man that's listening to this, if you want to have a better quality relationship, and you want to start asking better questions of your kids, or you want to start asking better questions of your spouse, sit down and say, hey, I'm going to ask you some questions now. Well, I want to ask you a question now. And it's going to be like a pink elephant in the room. And, you might look at me like I'm crazy, but I have realized I haven't been asking you these questions, and these questions are preventing us from having the quality relationship that I think we deserve. And I would like to have that quality relationship. And if you're open to it, I would love you just to have some fun with this. And let me ask you, like, what do I do that absolutely lights you up? And then what do I do that really pisses you off? And if I could stop doing the one and do the other one more, like what would, and it becomes more playful. But if you don't put in there what you stand to gain, they don't understand why you're asking. So it's almost like, is this dude cheating? Like, what's going on with this guy? Or like, okay, like, where's the other shoe that's going to drop? And so you allow the person to be totally disarmed in answering the questions. Larry, I love how you show up. I love how you impact and support people. I'm going to ask you a question, and I would love for you just to answer in anything that comes to mind. Before I ask the question, I want you to take a moment to just drop in and feel my audience, almost as if you could tap into the intuitive energy of the people that are listening to this show. And then I want you to just say whatever comes to mind. And the question is, what do you think my audience most needs to learn from you that you are uniquely qualified to answer today?
Oh boy. I would say it's maybe just going back to the description of the drift. I think I know that feeling pretty well because I've coached men through that, and I've also have been through it, and I'm also not immune to it. And just because I do this work, that doesn't mean a little drift doesn't try to enter into my life every now and again, and I have to really recognize that for what it is and what's happening, right? So I think to answer your question, it would be the explanation of the drift, and if you found any relatability in that description, perhaps it's time for you to do something different. And one of the resource that if you're okay with it, I want to point the audience in the direction of. I know stated a pre-order of the book, but it's really I love how just naturally and organically this thing around questions really emerged. So I actually have a free resource for your audience, which is if you go to thedadedge.com/25 questions. Again, thedadedge.com/25 questions. I've got 25 intimate conversation starters for you right there that you can like print off on a PDF. And if you really want to like identify the pink elephant in the room and all that, you can, like, I've had guys print that thing off and be like, hey, sweetheart, you want to have some, like, we haven't asked ourselves questions like this in so long, like since we've been dating, like these are really cool, fun questions. Like I figure we could probably go back and forth with these. And that's another way to disarm your wife and get into conversation with her, is to have those things even printed out. I've had guys and they have a blast with those things. So there's that free resource for your audience there too.
I love so much. I was looking and just keeping an eye on the time, but I was actually going to ask you to give us, 5 opening questions for kids, 5 opening questions for relationships. But 25 is better than 5. So I'm so grateful that you are abundantly generous with your knowledge. We're going to link, obviously, into the show notes your podcast. We're going to link your website. We're going to link the pre-order for your book, which I'm going to strongly encourage people to get their hands on. And then also, obviously, the free resource for the questions. My hope is that everybody dives into it and just starts to orbit what you're doing, because clearly you're creating an impact. All your success speaks into how beautifully people's lives are transforming because of the work that you do. But I want to ground something for the audience right now. I've had you on the show twice. You're incredible at what you do. I've spoken into your success so many times, but I do that not because I want to put you up on a pedestal, but rather to show that you really are very good at what you do. And the greatest way to validate that is to see the people that are following you, meaning people come back time and time again. And you weren't always that way. And then at some point in time, you had to create a shift. And that shift lasted for a moment. When our spouses look at us with 2 heads, it's often because they're like, okay, that certainty's going. And then they're waiting for us to go back to being normal. But you didn't. You kept doing it again and again until eventually that became the new certain. And then that continued to grow and evolve. And you speak into it so beautifully in everything that you do. And that is why I'm just such a huge advocate of you. I'm a huge advocate of how you show up out into the world. And I hope that the audience really takes a page out of your book, literally, figuratively, physically, and just every single day takes one action, one step to challenge who they were, in the hopes that they can pursue the person they've come here to be, because it is really about pursuing who we've come here to be. I started the recording of the episode before we hit record. Before I hit record, I said, man, if I don't get time to tell you, I want you to know I love you. I really do, from the bottom of my heart. I think you're an incredible human being. Thank you for spending so much time with us. Thank you for pouring your heart into yet again another what will no doubt be a best-selling book. I appreciate you so very much for joining us on the show today, brother. Thank you so much, Larry.
Oh, man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
To everybody listening, thank you so much for joining us. Grab a copy of the book, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. I always ask you to do that because it does help share the message out and in the world. But more than anything, tag Larry in anything that you post, because we would love for him to feel a little bit of the love for who he is and how he gets to show up out in the world. And then don't forget that challenge, one step every single day towards the direction of who you are pursuing your life to be.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.